So, on behalf of all the devotees here at ISKCON Milton, we'd like to welcome each and every one of you here today. Thank you all for joining. We're glad you came, and we hope you keep coming. So, today, this is actually this time of the year in ISKCON. It's Rath Yatra season. Unfortunately, this year, Rath Yatra will not take place in almost every place, or maybe no place at all. So we thought that it will be a good opportunity to share the pastimes of Lord Jagannath um, with everyone, so that we can foster that Rath Yatra feeling and spirit that we all feel at this time of the year. And I know all the devotees in the GTA are very sorrowful because we're not able, firstly, to visit the temple to have darshan of the Supreme Lord, and but most importantly, not be able to see the Jagannath Rath Yatra on the streets of Toronto. So it's stated that anyone who sees Jagannath on his chariot is guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, that doesn't mean that we go and attend the Rath Yatra and we see Lord Jagannath and we say, okay, now I'm guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead, so I can engage in nonsensical activities and with the hope that that one vision will allow us to go back home, back to Godhead. The idea is that once we see Jagannath, we would be so awed by his presence that um, we would feel forced to surrender to him fully, wholly and solely. So this Jagannath festival harkens back to over 5,000 years ago, when Lord Krishna descended uh, on this earth in Vrindavan. He spent the first uh, 15 years or so in Vrindavan before leaving for Mathura. And when Lord Krishna was leaving, the gopis who were so attracted to Lord Krishna couldn't bear to see him leave. So they all came when Akrura came to take Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. When Akrura placed Krishna on his chariot, all the gopis came and they held on to the wheels of the chariot, and they wouldn't allow Krishna to leave Vrindavan. Of course, we know that from Srila Prabhupada that Krishna never ever leaves Vrindavan. Krishna is always in Vrindavan. But nevertheless, with our material eyes, sometimes, or our material mentality, sometimes we think Krishna is here or Krishna is there, but Krishna is actually everywhere. So the gopis were thinking that Krishna was leaving Vrindavan and he will never return. So they all held on to the wheels of the chariot and they were trying to hold back the chariot. And Krishna promised them that he will return. And only after Krishna gave that promise that the gopis decide to release Krishna, release the wheels of his chariot, and let him move on to go to Vrindavan, to Mathura. Of course, we know Krishna Lila, or we've heard Krishna Lila, and Krishna went to Mathura, but he never physically returned in this Krishna Lila from 5,000 years ago. He never physically returned to Vrindavan. He moved from Mathura, he moved on to Dwarka. But during the Kurukshetra war, the gopis came to hear that Krishna was in Kurukshetra. So those of us who knows the geography of India, we know that Kurukshetra is not very far from Vrindavan. And Kurukshetra, in those days, the only means of transportation was either foot or on some kind of a moving vehicle, like a chariot, or some of us may have sat or seen a tonga, where there's this cart that's being pulled by bulls or oxen. So that type of transportation was the only means of transportation back in the day of 5,000 years ago when Krishna descended. Or you could be on the back of a horse. So those were the only means of transportation. But somehow or the other, the gopis felt that Krishna cheated them once before by promising to come to Vrindavan, and he never came back. So they were gonna make it their mission to go to Kurukshetra and bring him back to Vrindavan. So when they arrived in Kurukshetra, the war was over, and Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram, and Lady Subhadra were each seated on their respective chariots, and they were about to depart for Dwarka, and the gopis standing there with tears in their eyes. They said, "My dear Lord Krishna, we are not going to allow you to go to Dwarka because you lied to us. You told us you would come back to Vrindavan, and you never did. So we're gonna physically drag you to Vrindavan." So they held on to the ropes, etc., that was on these three chariots of Krishna, Balaram, and Subhadra, and started to physically pull the chariots to take them to Vrindavan. And so this is the beginning of this is one of the beginnings of the Rath Yatra festival. So our Srila Prabhupada, when he was a young boy, he would hear of Rath Yatra happening in Jagannath Puri. So as we know, Jagannath Puri is in the state of Orissa, which is neighboring state of West Bengal. So our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya that we all follow, uh, has its roots or its presence in the area of West Bengal, Orissa, Bangladesh, that general vicinity. So all Vaishnavas every year they would try to make it their mission or their cause to go for the Jagannath Rath Yatra in Puri. So Srila Prabhupada, as a little boy, he wanted to experience this Rath Yatra. So one time, Prabhupada went to the market with his father. His father actually was a cloth merchant, and he had a stall in the market, near not far from where they lived. And so his father will go, Gormohan Day was Prabhupada's father. He would go every day to the market to conduct business. And Prabhupada went one day, Prabhupada was with him. And he was about 5 years old. And Prabhupada started saying to his father that he wanted to have his own Rath Yatra cart. He wanted to conduct his own Rath Yatra. And his father said, "No, you cannot do it." And Prabhupada started kicking up and screaming and crying, and he threw himself on the road and started rolling all over the place and crying and bawling his eyes out. "No, I want my own cart." And his father said, "No, you can't have your cart." And so this Leela was going on between him and his father. And finally, there was one lady nearby, and she said, "Oh, you want a cart?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes." She said, "I have a cart. I'll give it to you." So the lady gave the Rath Yatra cart to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada conducted his first Rath Yatra at the age of 5. He had all his little friends. They all came. They had kirtan. They placed Jagannath on the cart, and they pulled the cart down the road in the area where they lived. And his mother, Rajni, she cooked a feast, and all the neighborhood people, they all came and they joined the Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada had a very successful Rath Yatra. Many years later, Prabhupada duplicated that that famous first Rath Yatra in India. There were only two Rath Yatras that was happening, one in Puri every year, and there's one that happens in uh, in uh, in Calcutta as well. And I believe now there's one, there's another one that is not done by ISKCON that happens in Allahabad. But sorry, not Allahabad, in Gujarat, in I forget the name of the city now. Um, but Prabhupada, started this Rath Yatra festival all over the world, and now on every continent on the Earth planet, there's a Rath Yatra festival, and it's headed by the followers of Srila Prabhupada. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for introducing us to Lord Jagannath. So who is Lord Jagannath? So the word Jagannath can be broken into two parts. Jagan means universe. Jagan or Jagat means universe. And Nath means Lord or Master. So another name for Lord Krishna is Jagannath, which means Lord of the universe. So many, many, many thousands of years ago, there was a king by the name of Indradumna. And this King Indradumna lived in what is today known as Puri, Jagannath Puri in Orissa. And King Indradumna was such a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. One day, a Brahmin came to King Indradumna and told him about an incarnation of Lord Vishnu known as Nilamadeva. So when Indradumna heard this, Indradumna became very intrigued. And this Brahmin told him that this Nilamadeva is situated right here in your kingdom. So, but the Brahmin couldn't tell him, or the Brahmin didn't tell him where exactly Nilamadeva was situated. So the king called all of his, not all, but the king called some of his trusted um, ministers and followers, mostly Brahmins, in from his kingdom, and he asked them to go out and search for Nilamadeva. So they all went in different directions searching, and they all came back empty-handed. No one could locate where this Nilamadeva was. There was one Brahmin by the name of Vidyapati. And Vidyapati came to a rural area within the kingdom, and that rural area was the people living in that area. They were like tribals, and they were pig farmers. Uh, and so Vidyapati, ended up at the home of the chief of the area. So we know in India, in little villages, they will have like a local chief. It's not an elected person, but someone who is naturally accepted by everyone as a leader. And they might sit under a tree and have their meetings or whatever. So the chief, um, Shabara, this tribe was called Shabaras. So the chief Shabara was a person by the name of Vishwasu. So Vidyapati was invited to stay at Vishwavasu's house. And so Vidyapati stayed there, but he also got some intelligence that that this Vishwavasu may know where Nilamadeva was. So when he stayed at Vishwavasu's house every day around midday, Vishwavasu would leave the house and he would go somewhere. And when he came back, he smelled so fragrant. So I don't know if anyone's ever been to a pig farm. Pig farms are not very, it's not very fragrant place. It's very bad smell. But Vishwavasu, whenever he returned, he would smell so fragrant. He would smell like sandalwood, camphor, musk, etc. He smelled so good. So Vidyapati, um, was trying to find out, like, where is it. He definitely knew that Vishwavasu knew where Nilamadava was, but everyone was kept quiet. Everyone, it was a secret. No one would tell. So eventually, after staying there for some time, Vishwavasu liked Vidyapati so much. Vidyapati was a young man, so he married his. He had a daughter of marriageable age. Her name was uh, Lalita. So he married Vishwavasu to Lalita. So one day, Vidyapati asked Lalita, he said, "Where is it that your father go every day?" He goes and he comes back, and he leaves at noon and he comes back late in the day, like almost at nightfall, and he always smells so great. Like, where is it that he goes? And she said, "Well, I cannot tell you. It's a family secret." And so Vidyapati got a little bit annoyed and he said, "What do you mean a family secret? I'm your husband. You cannot keep a secret from me. So you have to tell me." But Lalita was sworn to secrecy by her father. But nevertheless, after Vidyapati insisted, she told him that her father would go every day to worship Nilamadava. So Vidyapati said, "I want to go there. I want to see Nilamadava." So she said, "It's not possible." So now that the secret was out, Vidyapati started to pester his father-in-law, Vishwavasu, and told him, "I want to see Nilamadava. I want to," and he would bug him every single day. So finally, Vishwavasu got tired of being bugged. So he said, "Okay, I will take you, but I cannot show you where Nilamadava is. So if you want to come with me, then I have to blindfold you." So he blindfolded Vidyapati, and he took Vidyapati to Nilamadava's abode, which was on top of the Nilachala hill. Nila means blue, so it's a blue mountain. So, but Vidyapati hadn't forgotten that he is there on the king's business, and he was sent out to locate Nilamadava. So he got Lalita to tie around his waist. He had a cloth tied around his waist with a huge amount of mustard seeds in it, and he pricked a hole in the mustard seed container on the cloth, and so as he walked, the seeds were falling out of the cloth along the path where he was taken up the mountain to where the temple of Nilamadeva was. When he arrived at the temple, uh, Vishwavasu removed the blindfold, and there he behold the beautiful form of Nilamadeva. He was so intoxicated with Nilamadava's form, he just stood there transfixed, staring at Nilamadava taking darshan. In the meantime, Vishwavasu went off to the forest to collect forest flowers, etc., for his puja. While Vidyapati was taking darshan of Nilamadava, in front of the temple there was this big lake or a pond, if you will. And he noticed that on the side of the bank of the pond or this lake, there was a tree, and on the tree sat a crow. And all of a sudden, the crow died and fell into the water of the lake. And it fell into the water. And as soon as the crow hit the water, the crow, the soul of the crow left the body of the crow, and a beautiful uh, four-armed Vishnu-like form, what is called a spiritual form of the soul or a transcendental, rose from the water and ascended to the heavens. So we know from Srimad Bhagavatam the story um, of Ajamil, that when one dies and they've perfected themselves spiritually, which is what we are all trying to do here. when we leave this body, they will get a spiritual body. They will regain. Prabhupada said, we will regain our spiritual body, and the spiritual body looks just like Lord Vishnu, blue in color, with four arms, carrying a lotus. Not not the four symbols of Lord Vishnu, just one, a lotus flower. So this crow that died received a his spirit regained his spiritual body from the body of a crow. Usually, according to scripture, one has to take a human form, and only from a human form can one get a spiritual body and return to the spiritual world. Even if it's an animal and you feed that animal prasadam, the animal will next time take a human birth and get a chance to perfect themselves. But here, this bird, from a bird body, by the mercy of Nilamadeva, God regained his spiritual body and ascended to Goloka Vrindavan. Why? Because he died the before the form of Nilamadeva, in the presence of Nilamadeva. So he died while taking darshan of Nilamadeva. So Vidyapati thought, oh, this is a great idea. I will climb the tree and jump off into the lake and drown myself, and then I'll get my spiritual body and return to the spiritual world. So he climbed up the tree and he got onto the limb that was over the water, and he was just about to jump into the water when he heard a voice from the sky, Vidyapati, now that you behold the form of Nilamadeva, you should return to Maharaj Indradumna and tell him that you have found Nilamadeva. So Vidyapati then climbed down from the tree and decided that he wasn't going to leave, he wasn't going to commit suicide. And he returned. Vidyapati, Vishwavasu, was by then had finished his puja. He tied his eyes with the bandage and took him back home. Now, as soon as Vidyapati arrived home, Vishwavasu, not wanting Vidyapati to reveal what he'd seen, he bounded Vidyapati and gagged him and kept him a prisoner in his house so that he wouldn't leave. So then his wife, Lalita, Vidyapati's wife, started pleading with her father. She said, "My dear father, how can you how can you be so inhumane? How can you tie my husband up like this and keep him locked up? You should release him." And she begged, and finally, Vishwavasu couldn't um, couldn't not honor his daughter's request. So he released Vidyapati. As soon as Vidyapati was released, he immediately ran to Maharaj Indradumna and told him about that he had found Nilamadeva. So now, as soon as Maharaj Indradumna heard this, he immediately set out. He got a party together, and not a search party, but you can say like a search party, and started for the Nilachala Hills. And they followed, by then the mustard seeds had sprouted into little mustard plants. And so they followed the mustard plants all along the path, all the way up to the mountain where the temple of Nilamadeva was. And when they arrived at the temple, Nilamadeva was gone. Nilamadeva was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared. So now Maharaj Indradumna became very morose, and he decided that he was going to end his life. So he made a bed of kush grass, and he laid on that bed of kush grass and started fasting with the intention of dying. So after doing that, after laying on this kush grass, that night he fell asleep. Nilamadeva appeared, the Lord appeared in his dream and told him that I will come to you. Actually, just a little bit before that, when Vishwavasu returned from the forest with his flowers and his fruits, etc., he started doing his puja, and then Nilamadeva spoke to him, and he said, "My dear Vishwavasu, I was very happy with the forest flowers and berries and roots that you would offer me. But now I want to be worshipped in a royal fashion. And so I want to go to Maharaj Indradumna. And so then Vishwavasu understood what was going on. And that's the reason why he arrested his son-in-law and locked him up, because he didn't want him to go to Maharaj Indradumna, because Maharaj Indradumna will come and take Nilamadeva away. So now Maharaj Indradumna is laying on his deathbed, and the Lord appeared to him, and he said, my dear devotee, if you want me, if you want to worship me, then build me a temple and I will come. So Maharaj Indradumna got up and decided he wasn't going to kill himself, and he was going to go back to his city, and he will build a temple. So he built a temple on Nilachala Hill, a big, beautiful temple, which is the temple that we see today when we go to Puri. And the temple was completed, and he decided to go to Brahmaloka to bring Lord Brahma to consecrate the temple, to inaugurate the temple. So he left and he traveled all the way up to the top of the universe where Lord Brahma resides. And he waited for Lord Brahma to give him, to grant him a darshan. In the meantime, while he was gone from earth, his kingdom, he there were two kings that ruled after he left. One king was Suradev, and after Suradev, there's another king named Galamadeva. And so these two kings ruled. So while uh, Maharaj Indradumna was able to get Lord Brahma to come, just before Lord Brahma came, Galamadeva excavated. Over time, the temple had been covered up with sand. And so Galamadeva excavated that temple. And around that same time, Maharaj Indradumna returned with Lord Brahma. So when he came, he said to Lord Brahma, I built this temple. And Galamadeva said, no, I built the temple. And so there was a little bit of a tussle going on between the two of them as to who built the temple. But nearby, on a tree, there was an old crow, and that crow was chanting the names of Lord Ram forever. And that old crow was Jatayu. So that old crow said, I know who built the temple. I have been here for such a long time. And so he told Lord Brahma that it was actually um, Maharaj Indradumna that built the temple, and Galamadeva had just uncovered it. So Lord Brahma consecrated the temple, and Lord Brahma told uh, um, Maharaj Indradumna that from now on, this temple and the surrounding area will be known as Shri Kshetra. So Shri Kshetra is one of four places of pilgrimage that devotees go through in India. So Lord Brahma consecrated the temple, and then he left to return to his abode. So a flag was installed on the top of the temple, and it said that anyone who sees that flag and offers full dandavats to the flag will be liberated from this world. So sometimes ISKCON devotees go to visit Jagannath Puri, and they're not allowed in the temple if the pandas find out that they're ISKCON devotees, because they think that only Hindus should be allowed to see Lord Jagannath and no one else. So Maharaj Indradumna now waited, because Lord Nilamadeva had told him that if you return to your kingdom, if you build the temple, I will come. And now the temple has been built and the temple has been inaugurated, and still no Jagannath came, no Nilamadeva came. But Nilamadeva had told him as well that I will come in a wooden form, in the form of Jagannath, and I'll be known as Daru Brahman. Daru means wood, a wooden form of Brahman. So now Indradumna Maharaj is waiting and waiting and waiting, and no Nilamadeva is appearing. Temple is built, nothing is happening. So again, he became upset, and he decided, okay, I'm going to take my life. So he built another bed of pusha grass and laid down to a fast. He decided to fast till death. And then the Lord appeared in his dream, and he said, my dear devotee, Maharaj Indradumna, don't be morose. He said, tomorrow I will come. I will come floating on the river, on the sea, in a wooden form known as Daru Brahman, in a place called Baki Muhan. So the next day, the king went to that place, and he saw this huge log floating in the water. And how could he identify that log? How could he know which log? There could be many logs, but how could he know which one it was? That particular log had the four symbols of Lord Vishnu, which is the conch shell, the Sudarshan chakra, the club, and the lotus flower. So now Maharaj Indradumna decided that he was gonna. It's a very heavy log, so he brought many very strong men and elephants. First, some strong men, and they tried. They couldn't budge. They couldn't move the log. No matter how many men, how many big strong men he could find, no one could move the log. Then he brought elephants. He brought big strong elephants, and even the elephants couldn't move the log. So now the king became very upset. He went home, and that night, Lord Jagannath appeared in his dream and told him that if you bring Vishwavasu, the the Shabara chief who was worshiping me in my form of Nilamadeva, you bring him and you bring a chariot, and then only and you use your own hands, then only you can move me. So Maharaj Indradumna the next day, he got Vishwavasu, he got a golden chariot, and he went and he personally, along with Vishwavasu, they moved Daru Brahman out of the water, placed him on the golden chariot, and then drove that chariot back to the temple. Now, once he arrived at the temple, um, he placed the log on the altar, and he employed many sculptors from his kingdom to come and sculpt the form of Nilamadeva. But the wood was so hard that every time they put their chisel and they tried to cut into the wood, the chisel would smash into pieces. And so this way, he was not able to get anyone to carve the form of the Lord. But then the Supreme Lord himself came in a disguise as an old artist, an old man, and he called himself Ananta Maharan. And he told Maharaj Indradumna that he would carve the forms of the Lord. And we also find in the Narad Puran, it mentions that Vishwakarma, who is the architect of the demigods, he was the one that carved the forms of the Lord, and that he had taken the form of an old Brahmin. So anyway, this old Brahmin told uh, Maharaj Indradumna, that if you let me carve, it will take me 21 days to carve the deity of Jagannath Balaram, and Subhadra. He says, but I don't want any disturbances. I want you to leave me alone, unlock the door, and let me carve in peace. So Maharaj Indradumna agreed, and he closed the door, and he left the Brahman to carve the deities. But after about 14 days, about 2 weeks, he couldn't hear any sound coming from inside. Initially, he could hear the chiseling and the hammering and the hitting and so on. But after 14 days, after 2 weeks, he couldn't hear anything. He couldn't hear any sounds coming. So he became really anxious that the carving wasn't happening. So he busted open the doors. And when he opened the door, he didn't see the sculptor. The sculptor had disappeared. But instead, he saw three forms of Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. They were incomplete, it seemed. Jagannath and Balaram had arms, but they had no hands, they had no feet, and Subhadra had no arms or feet either. So now in Maharaj Indradumna is thinking that he was a great offender, that he promised that he would leave this Brahmin for 21 days to do his work. And now after, 2/3 of the time, he he broke his promise and he opened the door, and now the Brahmin is gone and there's no one to finish the carving. And so that the carving is incomplete. So thinking this way, he decided that he has been a big offender, and the solution to that problem of being an offender was to give up his life. So again, he built a bed of kusha grass and he laid on that bed and began fasting to death. But then Lord Jagannath appeared in his dream and he told Maharaj Indradumna that he's eternally living in Nilachala. And he lives in Nilachala in the form of Jagannath. And Jagannath is in the form of this Daru Brahman, this wood form. So he said in the material, the Lord told him that in this material world, he descends in 24 deity incarnations. And when he descends to this world, he descends with all of his paraphernalia. He descends with his entire abode is here. And he descends with all of his associates. So for example, in Vrindavan, it is known in our Vaishnava texts and from our Vaishnava acharyas that Vrindavan is not different than the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavan. And actually, Vrindavan is not in India. Vrindavan is in the spiritual world. It may appear to be in India, but it's actually in the spiritual world. So when one goes to Vrindavan, one is not going to a geographical place on this planet Earth in a little part of India. They're actually entering the spiritual realm. So Lord Jagannath told him that, and he said that the fact that you broke your promise is actually part of my pastime. That I manifest in this form of Jagannath so that devotees whose eyes are smeared with love will always see me as Sham Sundar holding my flute. So it's explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the original form of Krishna's original form is this threefold bending form of Sham Sundar in Goloka Vrindavan. So now the king prayed to Lord Jagannath and he asked the Lord that, my dear Lord, that from now on, please allow the family of the sculptor who carve your forms will continue to assist in constructing your Rath Yatra carts. And the Lord told him that the descendants from now on, the descendants of Vishwavasu, who used to serve me as Nila Madhava, should serve me generation after generation, and they will be called Daityas. And he said that the descendants of Vidyapati, born from his Brahmin wife, so apparently Vidyapati had two wives. He was a Brahmin, he had a Brahmin wife, and then he had a Shabari wife. His Shabari wife was Lalita. Lalita was from the Shabara clan. So he said, all of the descendants born from Vidyapati's Brahmin wife will perform the deity worship to him. And all of the descendants of Vidyapati born from his Shabari wife, Lalita, will do all the cooking for the offerings. And they shall be known as Suryaras. So Maharaj Indradumna then asked Lord Jagannath that if, with his kind permission, if he can keep the doors of the temple closed for only 3 hours in a day. So generally, anyone who has visited our ISKCON temples, if you go in the afternoon, you will find that the altar doors are closed from 12:30 in the afternoon till about 4 o'clock. And during that time, the Lord takes rest. That's the siesta time for the Lord. If you go to many temples in India, you will find the same thing. That in the afternoon, when the sun is the highest, all the temples, all the altars are closed. And at that time, the Lord gets some time for himself so that he can relax and take some rest so that he can be sitting again when the doors are open and giving darshan to all of his devotees. So the altar where the Lord sits is called an Singhasan. So Singha means lion and Asan means seat. So it's the seat of the lion-like Lord. So Lord Jagannath granted him that request that the temple will remain open all day except for 3 hours. And the king also asked the Lord that, my dear Lord, I beg you not to give me any children. I don't want any children, because I don't want in the future that my descendants will come and claim your temple as their own personal property. So in the Narad Puran, it's stated that Lord Narayan told Lakshmi Devi that there's a great abode, his great abode on earth is known as Purushottam Kshetra. And that abode is rarely achieved among the three worlds. And in that abode, the Keshava deity, who is fashioned, who is carved, like the Supreme Lord himself, is situated in that place. And if devotees simply see the deity in Purushottam Kshetra, in Puri, they will easily be able to go back to his abode. So if we get the opportunity to see the beautiful form of Lord Jagannath, then we can easily be able to go back to the abode of the Supreme Lord. But that doesn't mean, as I mentioned earlier, that we go once and we see and we say, okay, now I've seen Jagannath, I'm going back to the spiritual world. I can do any nonsense that I want. No, it doesn't work that way. Just like we hear that when we accept a guru, when we take initiation, the guru absorbs our karma. So our karma becomes minimized. The great karma that we came to this material world with becomes minimized. And who is Guru? Guru is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So it's actually Lord Krishna that is reducing our karma through the form of Guru. But if we take initiation And we think that now that I've taken Upanayanam Samskar and my guru is taking all my karma, I have nothing to worry about. And we go about committing more and more sinful activity. So Krishna is not that, Krishna is very smart. Krishna can see through that. And so whatever karma he had minimized, it will all come back. We think that we can fool Krishna, but we cannot fool him. So what Krishna says, that the idea is that if someone sees the Lord, their eyes will be full of love, that they will want to serve him for the rest of their life. Also in the Skanda Puran, it's mentioned that this most beautiful place known as Sri Kshetra is spread over 10 yojanas, or 128 kilometers or 80 miles, and surrounded by sand. So it's mentioned there in the Skanda Puran that this place, this Sri Kshetra, is located in Utkala. Utkala is another name for Orissa. And Utkala is described in the scriptures as the holiest place on the planet. Utkala is divided into 4 parts, which represent the weapons of Lord Vishnu. So these 4 kshetras, or these 4 areas, are known as Shankha Kshetra, which is the town of Puri. So Shankha is the conch shell that the Lord holds. Padma Kshetra, which is Konark, where the sun temple is. Chakra Kshetra. Chakra Kshetra is the city of Bhubaneswar, where Bhubaneswar is located. And Gada Kshetra, which is a place called Jajapur, where there is a Viraj Devi temple. So within this area of 10 yojanas, Puri, which is known as Shankha Kshetra, and it's called Shankha Kshetra because the town is shaped, the shape of the town resemble a conch shell. And so this, in Puri covers an area of about 5 krosha. And 3 of those kroshas are immersed in the ocean. So anyone who's been to Puri, they will find that Jagannath temple is a short walk to the ocean. So 3 parts of Puri Kshetra is actually in the ocean, and 2 parts is on land. And it describes that the land is covered in golden sand and decorated with a blue mountain. So this blue mountain is on the top of this blue mountain is where this temple, this Jagannath temple, was constructed by Maharaj Indradumna. And the Lord himself in his Archa Vigraha form. Archa means worshipable, and Vigraha means form. So the Archa, the worshipable form, the deity form that we see in the temple, is actually counted among one of 24 different types of incarnations that the Lord will take. So the Lord kindly takes incarnation in a worshipable form so that we get the opportunity to worship and serve him. So the Lord in his Archa Vigraha form is residing on the bank of the ocean on top of the blue mountain. In Shankha Kshetra, spread from east to west. The head is towards the west, where the Lokanath Mahadev temple resides. And there, Lokanath means, Loka means planet, Nath means Lord. So sometimes it's called Lokapal as well. So Lord Shiva protects this land as the Lokapal, the the land protector of that area. In Vrindavan, we would find that there are four locales, four directions around Vrindavan where temples of Mahadev are established, and Mahadev, Lord Shiva, will protect the land around Vrindavan, and in this particular case, he protects Shankakshetra from the western side where the Slokanath Mahadev temple is. So anyone who has visited Puri, if they attend to um, that temple, they'll be able to take darshan of uh, Lord Shiva in this Lokanath Mahadev temple. So now, as I mentioned earlier, this Jagannath temple is one of four dhams, four places of pilgrimage, and devotees who visit these char dhams, it's mentioned that if one is able to visit these four dhams within one day, that person is guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead. So, four dhams, one is in Puri, one is in the south, and two is in the north. So, if one visit these four places all within one day, if that is possible for them, they're able to go back home, back to Godhead. Of course, we know, like Maharaj Indradumna, that the devotees of the Lord, because of their devotional service, they become very spiritually powerful. And one uh, one benefit, if you will, of the spiritual power is one is able to travel at the speed of the mind. The fastest mode of transportation in this entire creation is the speed of the mind. So one might ask, how is that possible? How is it that one is able to travel the speed of the mind? So when we discuss Krishna Katha, and we're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, who eternally is residing in his abode in Goloka Vrindavan Dham, which is so far away from where we are in this material world. Well, when we hear the description of the Dham, we hear the description of the form of the Lord. When we hear this Krishna Katha, it transfers us to the abode of the Lord, because that is where the Lord is residing. And so when we're hearing this narration of the pastimes of the Lord, we're transported to this place. So immediately we can be sitting here in uh, in on the earth, which is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam as being in the middle of this universe, and we can transport ourselves out of this universe all the way to the spiritual world. It's explained again in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I think everyone on our group here, or almost everyone, has a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. For the last couple of years, we've been um, we've been encouraging everyone to try to get a set of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I think everyone here has a set of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the hope that when we receive a set of Srimad Bhagavatam, we would read it regularly. And when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, if we have any questions, we can inquire from devotees. Sometimes certain things in Srimad Bhagavatam are difficult to understand. So we can inquire from devotees who may have a little more experience in spiritual life. And those devotees should be able to answer our questions. So it's mentioned in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it gives a description of the a geographical description, if you will, of the entire material and spiritual world. So it's mentioned there that the material world is located in a small corner of the spiritual world. That a dark cloud appears in a small corner of the spiritual world. And within that dark cloud, the Lord expands in his first Purusha incarnation as Mahavishnu. And he lies within this dark cloud. And from his body, the perspiration from his body creates a vast ocean called the Karana Ocean. This Mahavishnu is also known as Karunadakashayi Vishnu. And he lies on the waters of the Karana Ocean. And as he breathes, as he exhales, bubbles emanate from his nostrils and his pores. And each bubble is a universe, a material universe. And then the Lord incarnates in a second Purush avatar, a second Purush incarnation, known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And he enters each universe. So it explains there in the fifth canto that the spiritual world is so vast. So we can just if we can, just to give an idea of how vast the spiritual world is, just imagine for a moment that in front of you right now, you're sitting in front of you, that there's a screen in front of you, and there's a projector projecting an image onto that screen. And in the middle of the screen, there's a tiny circle. Now imagine for a moment that there is someone sitting there operating that projector, and the operator starts turning the lens of the projector. And as they turn the lens of the projector, that little tiny circle starts to be enlarged. And the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets so big that it falls off the edges of the screen. So even though it's fallen off the edge of the screen, the operator is still turning the magnifier, the lens, and that circle is become so large that we cannot fathom within our mind how big that circle is. It's now a gigantic circle. We know that the circle exists because we've seen the circle. But we know it exists, but we now don't know how big that circle is. So that is the spiritual world. We know that the spiritual world exists, but we cannot understand the vastness of the spiritual world with these little tiny brains that we have. It is not possible. We need to, Krishna told Arjuna that in order to see me, you need to have spiritual eyes, divya chakshu. So Lord Krishna gave Arjuna divine eyes so that he could see the Virat Rupa, the universal form of the Lord. So like that, we need to have spiritual brain that we can actually understand the vastness of the spiritual world. So to travel that distance from where we're sitting now to there is a huge, vast distance. But we're able to do that just by simply hearing Krishna Katha. So I think my time have come to an end, and we'll end today's class. But just before I end, I just wanted to say that um, about 15 days ago was Purnima, and that Purnima is also, if you look on the calendar, you'll see that Purnima is also Snan Yatra. So that day was the day that's celebrated as the appearance day of Lord Jagannath. And so generally, um, uh, the Lord is brought out from his inner sanctum into a main mandap, a main abedi, like an area of abiding mandap. And the Lord Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra are placed on this bedi, this mandap, and devotees get the opportunity to bathe the Lord, to perform abhishek for the Lord. And so this abhishek takes place every year on this day in the month of Jyeshta, which is May, June. And after that, many of you might have seen that if you go to a temple regularly every week, you might, or every day, if you will, after this Nanyatra, Jagannath generally disappears. You don't see him again. So there is a Lila of Jagannath uh, catching a cold of all the water. Just imagine if you bathe for the entire day, what will happen to you? So, like that, we subject Jagannath. He's wearing very little clothing, but his clothing is wet. He's wearing his bathing clothing, his bathing outfit, and his clothing is wet. And we keep pouring more and more and more water and milk and yogurt and honey and water, juices, all kinds of things all over his body. Of course, he will get chilled. And he gets chilled, he catches a cold. And so he catches a cold, then the Lord goes into seclusion and he stays, and no one is allowed to see him. The pujaris will make homemade medicines, medicinal herbs. They will make tea and feed it to Jagannath and allow him to recuperate. And so it'll take him a couple of weeks to recuperate. And after about 15 days, then the Lord will emerge from his seclusion. And at that time, the devotees will place him on a cart. And so in Puri, the Lord will emerge from his seclusion from the temple in Jagannath Puri, and they're placed on carts, on chariots, and the chariots are pulled down Grand Avenue. And he goes from the temple that he normally stays in to a temple called Gundicha, which is down the street, few kilometers from the main temple. And there the Lord stays for about 8 days while his devotees get the opportunity to now come from all over and take darshan of him. And then because they haven't seen him for 2 weeks. And then after about 8 days, then the Lord returns to his main temple. So on last Purnima, which was about 14 days ago, I believe. Yeah, Purnima was on uh, the 5th of June. And tomorrow would be the day, the 15th day after the Lord had his Snan Yatra, and he will appear on Rath Yatra. But unfortunately, because of COVID this year, there is no Rath Yatra in Buri. There was a petition going around where people are trying to get Mr. Modi to override the courts because this matter went to the court, and the court said no, we can't have a Rath Yatra this year because of Puri. So the Rath Yatra isn't happening. But as devotees, if we really want to have Rath Yatra happen, we can have Rath Yatra happen. So I know in Toronto Temple, Snan Yatra is supposed to be the long weekend coming up on the 4th of July in the Toronto Temple. So some pujaris will be there and they will perform the Snan Yatra for the Lord. And then hopefully, I don't know all the details yet, but hopefully the Lord will come off the altar and maybe parade around the temple, inside in the temple hall, around with some kirtan and some devotees carrying them. And then that's the Rath Yatra, and they'll go back on the altar. So we'll end now. And I see Mohini Mataji has been anxiously waiting there to take back the mic. So thank you very much, Hare Krishna. And now I hand the mic back to you. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It was such a lovely class, such a beautiful description. It actually transported us to Puri and close to Lord Jagannath. We are really indebted to you for this class today, Prabhu. And I would like to share the mic with others in case they have any questions, remarks, or any clarification they want to seek. Over to everyone. Please, if you could just let us know who wants to ask the question. Ashoka Krishna Prabhu can take care of that.
So are there any questions or comments or clarifications from anyone? Please don't be shy.
I think everyone's so mesmerized. They're all with Lord Jagannath right now.
Or they fell asleep after hearing me talk for so long.
I don't think so.
Okay, so I guess we move on to the next part. No one seemed to have any questions.
Sure, Prabhu. So now, as everyone knows that yesterday was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's disappearance day, and also the culmination of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur book marathon. I would like to invite Jamanor Prabhu to make his offering for Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur book marathon. Over to you, Jamanor Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Mataji. First, I'll offer some prayers before